I look at like success is hitting your mark.
Yeah.
So that's why I think like you can be a billionaire and be successful. You can be a waitress and be successful. You can be a teacher and be successful. It won't ultimately comes down to did you mean to do what you were trying to do?
Okay.
Did you hit your mark? Yeah. Did you hit your mark? Was it a success? We tapped in.
Tap into another Founders Drive. Thanks for clicking on this.
What up, you man? Okay, we have an interesting founder today.
We're back.
You want to just jump right into it?
I kind of want to jump right into it, man. I mean, I'm excited about this. Yeah, I'm really excited about this.
This is a hard pivot from the last segment. Before we get started,
Yes.
of course, this is Founders Drive. In this episode, we're going to be talking about John McAfee today. So we have a very, very fun episode in store. After this, we typically do a super secret Founders Drive where we go more into the psychology, more into the application of some of the things that we've learned.
Yeah.
And it's always a treat because we always peel back a few layers and end up going down some threads that we don't do on this main episode. But
It's like a little bit more like strategy, business, how you can apply what we're learning.
yeah.
Not just the story.
And not even just a business to life sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's a really fun, interesting part. We'll link that, but in this episode.
Yeah, let's cover John McAfee.
So we were just talking about him selling software to the government. Is that the story that you're telling?
There was some, I mean, they're all a lot of unsubstantiated claims that he was making, but yeah, there was a period of time where he claimed that he had given computers to some of the like secretaries in the government that had spyware on it, and the spyware he was able to then get access and claim that he found out that some of the people in power were some of the most corrupt individuals on the planet. I don't think any of this stuff like came to light or like was like charged in a court or anything like that.
Yeah.
But given his background in antivirus, cybersecurity, and stuff like that, very interesting claims he makes all the time. Made.
I mean, it's an interesting business to be in, and he's quite the interesting character, especially when you peel back the life and after. I mean, it seems like the McAfee part, like the actual business, might be the most boring part of his day.
I think you're right.
Which is very different from a lot of the people. I mean, that's kind of like the footnote as a little bit of a preview before.
Man, associates, dude.
Yeah.
Or Xerox.
So, and also had the hell of an up.
Yeah.
And then after, we were talking about his documentaries, the Vice documentary and the Netflix documentary. And some of the stories seem made up.
They do.
They don't seem like it could all be lived out by one person.
Also, like, that's a big question I had is, as I was doing my research, I'm just like, is it just because you can? Or, like, what was the, like, motivating factor behind some of these decisions, especially, like, some of the esoteric ones?
Yeah. So, all right, what's the most compelling part to you? Where's the most interesting entry point for John?
Well, I think it's good still to paint, like, a background, even just a light background on who John was and why McAfee became such a powerhouse in the software world that allowed him to live the life that he then went on with. Because I think that really fueled all the stories that we were going to talk about. But he was able to exit as a very successful founder within a couple of years of starting his company. There's some good stuff there. And you don't just wake up and start a company. I mean, he had history of technical aptitude.
Yeah, and that's there was one line where he said, "They must have forgot who I was," in the Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
And that is a testament to what he was able to get good at, his skill set. So
his own conviction, I think.
So he was born in the UK.
Yeah, 1945.
And raised mostly in Virginia, I believe. And his father was a drunk and very abusive very early on. He used to tell stories about how his father would beat him, but his father would also beat his mother.
Yeah.
And then one time he said, "I have to do something." And he talked about it as much and said, "Hey, I fought back. I tried to stop him."
Yeah.
Now, where it gets really interesting is around 15, his father
Off himself, unalived for the YouTube. Yeah. And it's actually something we see with a couple of founders that have that really traumatic upbringing.
Oh yeah, and this one's is slightly different though because
It is.
there are rumors that his father didn't commit suicide, that
It was actually
It was actually staged by John.
yeah, it was actually a malicious act.
So that is something that lingers throughout. There's been talks, and this is just, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I known McAfee the name for the better part of my life, mostly because of the antivirus software.
Yeah.
And I've known him adjacently, but I haven't really dug into his story as deeply as I did this past week. And that's interesting because him being associated with that murder of his parents is very strange, and it seems to be something that happened even like where he's also associated with another murder.
Yep.
And I'll even say, going back to what we were saying with him and him growing up in that situation, and then had that be something that came up, it's in my opinion just a precursor to the behavior that he was.
If that's true, it certainly lends a lot of like credit to how paranoid he was. And how security conscious, feel like a lot of people with that mentality of like, I need to be protected. I need to make sure everything, that paranoia, it's coming from a base of like, I don't want to be found out, or like, I don't want to be exposed.
Yeah. Do you think that it's, well, I guess walk me through your interpretation of his childhood.
The childhood, I think it was very traumatic. I don't know if there's definitely rumors around how his father had passed. I think the official story is, suicide, but that's also not easy, having to lose a parent at the early age of 15. But he also excelled in like mathematics and stuff in his studies. And so there is like a lot to weigh, especially for a child, on like, what am I going to do in life? Oh, and then I have this very traumatic thing happen. I think some of that stuff came out in just a couple years right after high school, when he did get some jobs and ended up like basically severely drinking and trying to process a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of that period of time set up his later life, but you have to work through that first. I don't think he carried the alcoholism all the way through. And so that was something he had to figure out and battle very early on, before he even started the McAfee and Associates, to then see the success he did. I think he had to process it, and that was like a lot of time processing, and that was during those early years. And so I don't know, like calling out his like early childhood, I think there are some great points in it in terms of like his brilliance is shining through, but then there's also a lot of like trauma. So that's how I was reading his childhood.
It's definitely something that stuck with him. One thing that he said is, every day I wake up next to him, and he meant that in the psychology. He meant that psychology, that he always had that. His father was always in his mental, his psyche, his mind. So I guess moving along a little bit is, he basically learned we could just kind of step through, because that just might be the easiest way to move through it. Where is it? So he went to Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia. That's where he got his bachelor's degree in mathematics. And he later got a doctorate in science there, an honorary one. He claimed to have received a PhD from Northeast Louisiana State, but it was later disputed to be another honorary. He worked at a punch card coding firm, learning the basics of computing early on, and he worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, routing train schedules. And this is interesting because he used to do acid every day and drive acid every day.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was in the 60s, so I guess it checks out with the time period.
Times.
And he was routing these trains all day. At one point, he said he had stored an entire bag of DMT in his office and developed such severe paranoia, he believed his coworkers were trying to kill him.
Yeah,
in his 20s.
Which is also another thing with like people actually trying to kill him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not something that goes away. But yeah, DMT just in the office.
Yeah,
just openly. That's wild. He did have like that software background, I know, and so we can even skip to like how he was discovering those viruses. If you,
yeah, man,
I feel like that's like a really key part, because I mean that's how he got all this money too.
Yeah,
a lot of these things were at the first invention of the computer. It wasn't like we have it today, where there's Windows Defender and some of these other programs that you would rely on out of the box. A lot of these computers were just like a node in a network, and you'd come in with your floppy drive and you'd plug in the floppy disk, run your program, and then you'd take the floppy disk out when you left. And so everybody had like, their own personal floppy disks. You run your program.
I think some people.
Floppy disk is the precursor to the CD. So most people know what like a CD is.
Yeah.
Floppy disk was right before that. And it was.
Floppy disk wasn't.
Yeah. It was a square. It's one of those square, and it's actually, if you're on almost any website, it's the save icon. Yeah, it's the square save icon that most websites have. Yeah, you used to have to. It was a hard and they made them in two sizes. They were squares. And you have to plug them into push them into the computer where it would read the film. There was some film inside the hard casing, and it basically lets you read and write program. Very basic. And so because everyone had like their own personal programs on their own personal floppy disks, you basically had your programs with you wherever you went, but you needed a computer to run them. So you'd plug in the disk and run your programs. There was software that was started in Pakistan by these two brothers who were selling software for enterprises, and they built a way in the boot menu, right? So when the software boots up, it talks to the computer, hey, I need this memory, I need to do this, I need to do this. They wrote some code at that sequence to tell the computer, hey, don't run your normal program, run this one instead. And basically what it did was it overwrote the entire boot sequence for the computer, and it would install a note that said like, this software is built by the two brothers' names, with basically a signature, and it would stay dormant on the PC, and every time you plugged in a floppy disk, it would copy itself to that new floppy disk. And so that first virus was called the Brain virus, and it didn't do anything except for self-replicate. That's all it did. And the reason that it was built was so that they could find people that were using their enterprise software for free. So that's how it started. It eventually got to the United States, where John McAfee was able to dissect the program and figure out how it worked. For anyone who's technical out there, it actually uses interrupts, and it interrupts the interrupt. It's very interesting the way that they were able to figure this out. And there weren't any protections on this level of the computing at this stage in the game. And so, yeah, he was able to figure out how it worked, figure out how it self-replicated itself. And in doing that, he was also able to break down, oh, this is where I can stop it. This is how it's doing this. And so, if I can run a program that says, if there's any code on your computer that's looking for an interrupt, that's going to be malicious code. And so then I can just tell you, hey, I found this malicious code in this file. You might want to check this download just to make sure that, this is exactly what you thought it was going to be, because there's no reason that this program should be messing with these interrupts, because that's like lower level system stuff. So that is like a really interesting way of like getting into the lab, finding out how things work, and then immediately going, oh, that's how it works. This is how I can stop it. And that was like the genesis of McAfee and Associates.
I think that's really interesting how. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting that being his jump off point, because you were talking about this a little bit earlier, how he was early to the party.
Yeah, I mean, antivirus itself was just becoming a thing. It was just barely early enough for him to make a name for himself, I think. I think that's huge. Yeah. That first mover advantage. If you can launch early enough where you become the de facto, the de facto person in the area for like that specific thing, I think you get a lot of credit for that.
I wonder how much of the whole spreading of the spreading of his antivirus software was into versus casual, because I heard him tell the story of it being more, hey, I saw this problem, I want to fix it, I put forward, and people downloaded it and it spread. And then other people that talk about it being more intentional, that he saw an opportunity not only to solve a problem but then to start a business.
Yeah,
he was more
I think he was absolutely intentional about it. To what level, I'm not sure, but like there are certainly newscasts of John talking about the fear and the disaster that's coming with these viruses.
Yeah, after
around that time of like, yeah, like I have a product that can help you with these things. And so you need to be worried about these, and talking specifically about the blast radius and how many computers in the United States could be affected. And then you'll see clips of the reporters going for an alternate view, and they bring up some cybersecurity person who we don't know. And they're like, yeah, the blast radius is it's not that big. It's really not that big of a deal. You really should be worried about it. And John's like, no, you need to be worried about it. Buy my software, because otherwise your data is going to be gone.
But so there's two parts there. The first thing is when he actually developing it, because I sometimes wonder how many founders rewrite history in terms of their intent to go in, start a business. I want to take this from here to here versus
it could have been open source, I guess.
I just started this thing and
yeah, he could
open source off and everybody loved it right away. It was magical.
That's never the case.
And so that kind of 0 to 100, that whole
literally, yeah,
like that's the thing that I always find interesting with people, is how they tell that story, or how they gloss over all of the stuff that led to that. Things just kind of go viral.
What's funny is he actually says this, is that as soon as he figured out it was between the brain and the Michelangelo virus. The Michelangelo virus is the same thing as the brain. It would self-replicate. but it would destroy your computer on Michelangelo's birthday. That was the only difference. But I mean, he even says, he's like, oh yeah, I saw how they were doing it. I instantly knew, oh, if they're doing it this way, I can stop them. And I wrote a program in 2 days. That was what he said. I wrote a program in 2 days and shipped it.
I was listening to this,
and we're in the age of AI where people aren't even doing that.
I listened to this. I was listening to this podcast recently, and this person was talking about timing, and the person said that timing is more a function of recognition than it is of hard worker force.
Okay.
Or recognizing.
I mean, from the dawn of time, building the thing has never been the constraint. Some people it has been, it's argued, but building the right thing has always been the constraint and always will be the constraint, especially even now in an age of AI where we have the ability to build anything in a prompt. I think it's more highlighted now for sure because it's pretty obvious that building barrier isn't really there anymore.
Yeah.
Some people are, and I think for John, it's interesting. Not only was he technically competent to be able to do these kinds of things, but then the way he talks about them is.
And so that's the second part of what you were talking about.
Nobody would say I built Microsoft in 2 days, but if John was doing it, he probably would say that.
No, but they kind of did though, or that's what the story ends up getting.
That's the narrative
as. At least the story when Paul Allen was fussing and they had to build the
plane. Yeah.
In the plane there. And so there's those stories that get spread out, but it seems like the difference is McAfee's the one who's telling the shorter version of the story.
Right.
And when you go back on the other founders, they're like, oh my God, it was so hard. It took forever. Nobody even appreciates the work. But the other part that's really interesting is then the campaign that he had after. We were talking about Vince McMahon and turn on the cameras and how it seems like John McAfee lived in the same world where there was a blend between real life and fiction. And this is something that I want to get, but I think there's a little bit of a preview that we can get right now. Which, I mean, I find it so fascinating. It seems at moments, especially in the documentary, that he was really aware of the power of narrative and seemed to be shaping it and when you go back to how he sold the antivirus software, he was not scared to lean into the fear and the paranoia of, just people's computers being taken over.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It's like almost like he's marketing it every day, and it's like his life. His life is the thing that he's now marketing of, as how crazy it is, and
people buy the founder. They don't necessarily buy the product, which kind of makes sense because the product was produced from the founder.
Yeah.
So the founder's at the source. You can kind of anticipate the versions of what might be produced. But going back to it, I still think it's something where we can sit on a little bit because that's the tool set that he used. That's what he leaned into. And you look at what drives certain founders who are ultimately looking at why they're making their decisions, what they're choosing, what they're not to do, how they move things. And that's something that I think is worth, killing them.
Yeah. What do you think his motivations were in doing that? I mean, I think it was successful.
I mean, to sell. I look at success as hitting your mark.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you can be a billionaire and be successful. You can be a waitress and be successful. You can be a teacher and be successful. It ultimately comes down to, did you mean to do what you were trying to do?
Okay.
Hit your mark. Yeah. Did you hit your mark? Was it a success? And I think that he was trying to sell. And I think he also recognizes that people buy more off of fear and paranoia than they do off of potential or
especially in an age where computers are just starting to be a thing. That even in and of itself could be scary.
Huge unknown.
It's like, oh, well, what's a computer? No, actually, sometimes you take for granted how old some of these stories are in terms of the 60s, 70s. Time the actual state of the art. Was in labs of hotel rooms of computers instead of the personal laptop like we have today. But
I think there's a lot of parallels between what we're doing right now, though. In the stereo environment right now, I think television is very, very new to people, and you see the range of people talking about it. Some more optimistically, other people they're Lyndon McAfee was more not necessarily on the AI front because I don't really know many of his thoughts on AI, but would probably lean more into the fear mongering aspect of it.
Oh yeah, I would think so.
I think Elon Musk does
when it suits him. Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
The whole signing the OpenAI letter that says that they shouldn't have a company with their intentions, but then he also has Grok. It's like they're both kind of AIs, and one is one that you got burned on, one is one that you own, and so you're always going to be in favor of the one that you own.
Yeah, but I think he's still fear in the sense that he talks about the threat of AI heavily. And I don't know if there's I don't know if there's an interview where I've heard him only say, hey, we're going to be very optimistic on the other end. He somewhat says that, but it's very arbitrary. I think he leans heavily into, hey, this is some stuff it's an existential threat.
Yeah, he definitely says that a lot. For some reason, I don't get the same fear mongering as I did when I was watching some of the John stuff. And I do find Elon to be incredibly optimistic, even though he's saying things that are very scary. He'll be like, yeah, we'll have Optimus, and we'll have Starlink, and we'll have all these other things that are going to make the future less scary. Even though, if you think about it, like, that's a lot of unknowns. With John,
He's very extreme in his language. I don't know why it gets.
it gets like tempered down a little bit.
Lot.
When I
And if you take a transcript of how he speaks about this stuff,
right, if it's just words,
which I've done,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, different. I mean, he paints a very dark picture. There's maybe like this. He might say, yeah, but I'm optimistic at the end. And maybe that's all the difference that you need. Like, you can have an 80%. This is something that's, if we don't handle it right. And he's more conditional about it, I think.
There's something about the delivery where it doesn't feel like I need to figure this out now while my hair's on fire, stuff like that. It's like, almost, it feels like too far in the future for people to be like too worried about it. And I think with the McAfee stuff, the virus thing is like, no, you have a virus right now. Your computer's infected right now. There's nothing you can do about it unless you call me and get vaccinated, was the way he used to sell the software.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to pull back, is the framing around those problems. Because I think, so you really think that he doesn't lean into the doomsday speak? You think he's very optimistic?
Yeah, I think Elon's incredibly optimistic in terms of, because I mean, he'll be like, even if you lose all your limbs, I'll give you movement back. I've got technology to do that. You lose your eyesight, I'll give you it back. I got technology to do that.
Does he say all that though?
Yeah, I mean, at least from what I've heard, in terms of the success stories of the brain chips that he's been implanting in people and the promises that he's been giving for return to life stuff.
I think Elon Musk is a very, very underrated framer in terms of the way that he positions what he talks about in his press. And I think there's so much to learn from that.
Yeah.
That never really gets uncovered. I think McAfee might be more extreme on it, which I think is very believable in how he talks about different products and services that he's put out there. But I see him as very extreme.
Really?
Elon Musk.
Yeah. As
a doomsdayer. He ends it and caps his talks with, but and he's also producing right now too.
yes.
Things where, hey, we see this as an existential threat. We have to do something about it. And so I did something about it.
Yeah, and maybe that's why it's not as scary, or like it's not as taken as scary.
But we're also seeing a highlight reel. Yeah. At the time seeing it, it might have been like, oh, I need that.
Yeah, I think if there's enough, if all of the news stations around you were saying, oh, look out for these viruses, or another example, Y2K was like something that didn't really matter, but so many people were worried about it. There was this whole, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, in the moment, if you had somebody that's like, yeah, I got a program that'll save you from Y2K, just download it, and it's free.
Here's another thing then. There was a real threat in what he was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like a real boots on the ground.
Yeah, threat. If you didn't have antivirus software at the time, your computer was subject to threat.
Yeah.
If we don't go to Mars, we won't have a planet or a place to live. It's so far removed.
There's that future versus now.
And you get his attention. In the moment he has your attention, but you don't actually feel the immediate threat. You feel the fear, but you don't feel the threat that he's pointing to. So it's almost like an anxiety. And then it passes. You see the product that was developed.
Oh, that's being solved.
And then you forgot that you were induced into a fear about something that may or may not be existential.
Yeah, you have a lot less fear if someone comes in and says, oh, I have the solution for this, or I'm working on a solution for this. It's like, oh, okay, well, he solved it. He's good. Like, we're going to be fine. It's not,
I'm saying the other way around.
Really?
I'm saying that, like, what I'm trying to parse out in my mind right now, I'm trying to John fear selling.
Right.
Which is, I think, in a way where you have to get the person's attention.
It's one way to do it. Yeah. Fear is one of those emotions that'll trigger that attention. Yeah.
But then the other way, which I see it being done, but it doesn't. I'm interested because like you didn't attach the fear label to Elon Musk, but I think he sells heavily off of fear.
I think he understands how you're saying he sells. I do like when Elon talks about kids. And he's like, oh, there's an existential like birth rate. I feel that there as well. So it definitely feels different. When I hear John talk about it, it's like, hey, this is an imminent threat, and you could be like you're going to be harmed, and so like pay attention to what we're talking about. With Elon, it definitely feels like futuristic, and I think there is a difference there between the how immediate the crisis is.
I see.
In terms of pulling your attention.
I see. I mean, they're also operating in different domains too. I think with Elon stuff, I mean, it is very much associated with the future and space travel, all of these different
Stuff that's hard to grasp for a lot of people, I think.
Well, I think you have a visual of a rocket taking off. That's a little bit different than your computer virus.
That's true.
Infecting something infects your computer. Like that's a little bit, especially back then, was I think harder to understand.
Yeah.
How far that can be taken. What's also interesting though is John McAfee also said that especially after he left McAfee and he went up and he sold all his shares.
Yeah.
He was very adamant that, hey, product anymore. It's not even useful anymore, especially in the age of the internet.
I mean, he made an entire video called How to Uninstall These Antivirus Software.
Right.
I mean, don't watch it if you're really looking for those instructions. But yeah, I mean, that also set up the entire crazy the rest of his chapters because he was able to exit that company with like somewhere near $100 million in the mid 90s. Like that sets up an entire different arc of his paranoia and some of these other stories.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we put a button in that Elon topic. Is there any other correlations or differences you see between the two? Because
no, I just think that there's something they're sold about what happened if you don't
take action
on whatever they're talking. So I think it's just a tool that gets underutilized. Like it's like in plain sight, but I think it's an underutilized tool in selling for tech people.
There's like the immediateness of the pain.
Yeah, and speaking to that, hey, this is your life if you don't do that. This is what happens if you don't do. This is what happens if you do. And that contrast is, I think, really important in selling. I think that's something that
To get people to take action and
and I think you can look at an Elon and be like, oh, this guy is just a tech guy. He's not really good at selling. He just makes really dope tech and produces it. But I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I think he's very good at, and you can see a pattern in it. I think he's very good at painting a picture one way and then painting the other picture and then presenting that. I think with McAfee, you might see him as an eccentric guy that's an eccentric narcissist that's living his own story, but he is also very smart and understands psychology as much as he understands technology.
the through line there is how much value they were able to create for themselves using those skills.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, the minimum is 100 million.
Sure.
The maximum is what, almost $1 trillion?
Yeah.
Like the amount of value in those skills, if applied correctly, is insane. And I think that's something that we will absolutely touch on the Super Secret.
So,
But moving the story along.
yeah, so that's something that I think is really, really fascinating between those two founders is that's more of a tactical thing, but I think it's not as highlighted as much as it can and should be.
Yeah, I think that parlays into an interesting topic of discussion with McAfee, especially after he sells his stake in McAfee and Associates and is essentially on the run,
Right.
living his best life. And I think it pairs really well with what we're talking about. And there might be more you can go into here of like controlling the narrative where, John had a very interesting life after his software debut, moving and buying property. He had a New Mexico ranch where he had these lightweight flyers, lots of sex and drugs and guns. Party animal. Ended up having to shut down that ranch. I think his nephew ended up in a fatal accident with one of those gliders, and it was, just something that he had to deal with. And there's definitely a narrative there of we're gonna party, like this is safe, like even though they probably should have had a license to do it, they didn't. And controlling that narrative of like, oh, here's this founder who exited and now he's living the lifestyle, kind of like, I guess you might sync it with like what Jeff Bezos is now seen as.
Do you think that
Party animal.
his through lines seem to be there the whole life, at least post high school? He said that in high school he was very he didn't really go out as much.
Yeah.
He was head in books, straight A's, and wasn't as wild of a boy as he became after. I mean, there's stories about him having a whole meth lab and then recording that.
Yeah.
Well, not even stories, there's video.
So, yeah, there's evidence you mean.
So yeah, there's that. But I'm also curious about what's the real requirement for success?
The real requirement for success?
Yeah, because it's not like he spent a lifetime on a lot of these things. He had his opportunity, he took it, and then he went for it.
Yeah, I mean,
And between it.
Yeah, between starting the company and exiting was what, like 6 or 7 years?
Yeah.
If that?
Yeah.
Like, that's like a high school, it's 4 years in high school.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a small part of your life. I guess success, like you were saying before, is hitting your mark. What's the minimum amount you need to hit your mark?
Spend a lifetime trying to build a company.
Yes, and people do.
Or you can build a company very quickly and then go on your, go on your escapades,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
your adventures.
what else to call it? Yeah.
So what's the missing link? What's the gap what does he understand that the average person doesn't understand? Is it just different, or is it?
I think it's just different. I am not of the opinion that John McAfee could take McAfee and Associates from where it was in 1994 to where it got to in the early 2000s. I think he's really good technically. He's really good at solving those problems, but the kinds of leadership you need to become a global name and a global company and the kind of structure you might need to do that are not exactly his skill sets. I mean, you have stories of when he was a CEO, they had a point system where the employees would do things for points as an internal leaderboard. And the highest ranking point task was having sex in the CEO's office, to where he was the CEO. And he was like, came in one day and said, "Hey, why are you cleaning my desk? You don't need to do that." And one of the ladies was like, "No, trust me, I need to clean your desk. Trust me." He led a party here last night, and you don't want to work here unless I clean it. And there's that kind of environment that I think carried him through even after his company. And you can see that in some of his adventures. That I don't know if that kind of mentality would have gotten it to the global success that McAfee ended up becoming, because it definitely grew after he exited.
His notoriety.
The company grew to,
I think it was like 14 billion
multi-billionaire status
after Harvard at Intel. And then they ended up breaking off again afterwards.
Yeah. But I just
retaining his name.
I just don't know if that's really and that's something else he regrets, is using his name to. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like he has opportunity. He made a lot of money. Do that part of his his thing, which was solving that one problem, getting really deep into the technical parts, pushing out a fix, and then marketing it in a way that was successful. And he had enough money where it didn't really matter, right? There's levels of success that people look at. For most people, the difference between $100 million and $1 billion probably isn't that much different. A number on paper, yes, absolutely. And maybe if you're late,
you don't think that he possesses the skill set to go and replicate it, or do you think that he doesn't possess, or do you think that he lacks the focus?
I think it's the focus. I don't think he's necessarily interested in doing that. He had other success stories in mind. That was the way that I read it.
I think that he has a really unique skill set, and I think especially from going back and seeing the way that he what he knew, and again, we've already established him as an unreliable narrator, but
you should explain that.
Well,
because I think when you say that, I understand what you're saying, but I think you're implying a little bit more too.
I believe that he's an unreliable narrator, mostly because of the extreme nature of thing that's been going on around him. And maybe unreliable is a little bit too strong, because there's been so much truth in what we've seen, and he's also peak veiled. But there's this feeling that I get when watching him, that it almost feels like the craziness of his life is a construction of his own doing.
I get the feeling that he's very aware of the camera. He's very aware of the narrative. And where most people are in the narrative, it's kind of hard to separate yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like he's very aware of what he's crafting.
That's what we were going back with kayfabe.
Yeah.
Going back with WWE and Vince McMahon and wrestling and the archetype of a story, and then being able in that story and act it out. There was times in the past where they really wanted you to believe that everything that you were seeing in a wrestling environment was real.
Even today, that's the.
But it's been one of those things where people know it and they suspend the disbelief because it's that strong.
Oh, sure.
The narratives are that strong. So back in the day, the blend was way more real. And I see this with Donald Trump blending the story and making it feel like reality TV. I see this we saw that with Vince McMahon. We see that with wrestling. But I think I think that John McAfee is also in that lane of he's living this story, and we are all living a story to an extent, but it seems like he's living this story in trying to take it to the extreme every time. Like, it's so interesting to me that he was always on the run, but he would always introduce himself as John McAfee to everybody. Hey, I'm John McAfee. If you pick up the phone, like, yep, this is John McAfee. Yeah, I'm looking to rent a limousine. Yep, to this address. Okay, we got to go on the run. They're gonna find it.
Right.
It just seemed so.
What I'm curious about is how would you compare that to like a Steve Jobs reality distortion deal?
I think it's coming from the same place.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think it's coming from the same place. I think it's coming from the same understanding of the way the mind works, and then using that understanding as a tool to advance. Yeah, and to advance your
Yes.
causes.
I think what's also interesting is he was paranoid about things that ended up becoming true.
Yeah.
Like people trying to kill him,
Yeah.
people burning down his house. Like these are the kind, and there are women who've openly said in interviews, "Yeah, I tried to kill him.
Yeah.
I tried to shoot him." It's like the kind of life you have to live, where it feels like some of the paranoia is valid. You know, it's not all a reality distortion. There is some of it where it's like, oh,
Well, I think,
you know.
I believe in speaking yourself. I think you can speak situations into existence. And what I mean by that is when you speak things enough, when you say things enough, program your own mind and you put yourself in positions where things are more likely to happen.
So if you're, oh, well, okay. Like if you said they're after me, they're after me, they're after me.
You're going to put yourself in a position where people are after you.
If someone's after you,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I believe that, and yeah, I don't believe like things just magically appear, but I think you steer your body through your language, and so like just like you turn that wheel, if you turn it left, you're gonna keep going left, right? Turn it right. If you turn it right, you're gonna swerve to the right a little. And I believe that with our words, we program and steer our attention.
That's interesting.
And that our attention drives our. So I think another example is somebody like Tupac, who grew up as an art student and then started acting out more like hood centered gangster roles. And his world became that.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things like, all right, if I say this, and here's like a more of like, I guess like parameters around this will you know what I'm saying? Parameters around this will. But one reason is I think when we say things, if we act in a different way, we get a lot of cognitive dissonance. So if I say like people are after me, and this is how extreme I think it is. If I say people are after me, people are after me, people are after me, and then I'm in a situation where people are after me, I'm gonna feel a level of mental because I'm not congruent with what I'm saying. And so I believe that the body naturally would be like, okay, well I need to be in that situation since that's what I'm programmed to do. Yeah, that's interesting, weird situation. Yeah, so I think like. It's a little woo-woo, but I also think that when you think hard enough about it, it's like it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. And so some might say that like his lifestyle was product of his own narrative, his own storytelling, so creation. Yeah, is there anything else that you might recommend founders out there that they could pick from John McAfee's or from your reading of John McAfee's life?
I think one is solving a problem, and then the thing that's really interesting to me with John McAfee is not only just solving the problem, but then selling the problem. And the way that you sold the problem,
A solution.
the way they sold the solution is you could even say sell the problem. Like, kind of got a problem, then we're also gonna give you the solution. The problem's out there.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a real thing to peel back there with how quick he sold something that people needed.
Yeah.
And how shameless he was about going around and broadcasting that and letting people know that they needed it and putting real constraints around that. He says people draws people's attention. People like risk, but they don't like experiencing it themselves or without a solution. And he's somebody that I think it's a real takeaway. I think that it's very clear with him too, because he was in and out. I also think another thing is understanding the value of privacy.
Yeah.
And understanding his some privacy, where he was saying like, know what you're giving up when you're getting something for free online. Know what
It's not actually free.
know what the exchange is. Know why they're offering something for free. Know what the offer is and what you're actually agreeing to. And I think that's a really powerful thing to take away from them.
I like that. Yeah, I was thinking like really controlling the narrative and understanding where you're at in the narrative. There's so many times where I've watched a John McAfee interview where it's almost like you can feel Like he has a bunch of stories queued up that he wants to tell, and anytime the interviewer tries to go a different way, he goes, "Okay, we'll go back to this,"
Yeah.
because he knows, okay, this is a narrative I can tell, I can explain, and he knows it captures people's attention in a way that is so beautifully John. Like I haven't seen it in a lot of other people. It's very unique to the way he's able to capture a room and talk about these stories in a way that captivates your attention. It's just, I don't know how else to describe it. And you see this a lot in the interviews that you watch. He's always talking about the good old days, almost like it's that feeling. And so I think controlling the narrative and understanding where you fit inside that narrative,
Yeah.
he's a master at that. And so that's something that people could learn for sure.
That's also something we're about to get into.
Yeah.
In this super secret founders drive, which you can find on Constance. We have some episodes floating around YouTube as well. There, we're going to go a little bit more into John McAfee, controlling the narrative. We're going to go into some of his values a little bit more, just stuff that we've deduced. The leaves touch on the psychology, but we're really going to get a little bit more practical, strategic, and peel into John McAfee, the mind of John McAfee.
Yeah. How you can apply this in your business.